This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft. Because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. This week, Kathryn and I are joined by Jennifer Bowen to talk about the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop. This is a special episode because it comes with an invitation for you to join the Beyond Bars Voices of Incarceration annual student reading. This year, thanks to COVID, the reading is occurring on Zoom on Saturday, October 24th at 7:30 Central Time. Our virtual event promises to be another spectacular, moving tribute. We will be joined by our alumni, teachers, mentors, and family, reading powerful poetry, fiction, and essays written by our students. In addition, we will be featuring previously unreleased video footage of our current students reading their own work from the inside. We hope you can join us for an unforgettable night. So once again, that is a Zoom event happening on Saturday, October 24th at 7:30 p.m. Central Time via Zoom. You can get the link to sign up for this event at mnprisonwriting.org, or you can go to storyworkspodcast.com, click on this week's show notes, and we will get you over there. I hope you can attend the reading. They never fail to move me, to impress me, and to inspire me. Enjoy this special 1-hour episode of the Storyworks Roundtable. Hello and welcome to this week's Storyworks Roundtable. Today, Kathryn and I are thrilled to have Jennifer Bowen Hicks here to talk about teaching writing with incarcerated writers. Jennifer is a writer and the founder and artistic director of the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop. Her work appears in Orion, The Sun, Kenyon Review, the Iowa Review, The Rumpus, The Normal School, Tin House, and elsewhere. She has received tuition scholarships from Rona Jaffe for the Bread Loaf Writers Conference, a Jerome Foundation Travel Award, and more. Her work has been honored with Best American Essay Notable Mention, a Pushcart Prize Special Mention, the Arts and Letters Prize, Tim McGinnis Award, and others. She lives in St. Paul with her sons. Thank you, Jen. Welcome to the Roundtable.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. So, can you give us some background about the prison system in Minnesota and just tell us if it's representative of the USA as a whole, or if we're unusual here? Just give us a little context for what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say we work only in the state facilities, and in the state of Minnesota, like all states, I'm sure there are county and federal facilities also. MPWW happens only in state facilities. So I think it's tough to know for certain because I have not worked in other state facilities, but I've visited quite a few. And I think that Minnesota is unique in a few ways. One is their support of the writing program, obviously. California is probably the leader in arts and corrections. But that's a little different program. It's comprehensive and covers all the genres. I've visited Angola and Louisiana, for instance, and most of the programming there is faith-based, which I think is pretty typical for a lot of prison systems. And so the fact that we are in a state, or we are in a comprehensive sort of situation with the state in that they allow us to be in every adult facility is also unusual. So the facilities in California and other states where they have an arts and corrections program, they tend not to cover the whole state, which means when the students we work with transfer, we just find them in the next place that they're at. So the community connection is a little stronger, I think, in our system. I think that we might be the largest creative writing program in correctional facilities, and that's primarily because of the number of classes we offer, but also the fact that we're in every facility. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay. So we're in every facility in Minnesota's correctional system. And we being Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop, how did MPWW begin? What's the origin story here?
Sure. I taught a class in 2011 at Lino Lakes Prison, which is a medium custody facility. And I really just volunteered because I wanted to teach creative writing. And I had worked with a mentor who had a real love of the work he had done with an incarcerated writer and spoke highly of it. I also have several family members who have been incarcerated. And so my goal was just to volunteer to teach a class. And the class was just too much fun, and it felt too meaningful. And I couldn't not teach again. And I couldn't imagine why the Twin Cities didn't have more people teaching in the facilities, given our pretty vibrant literary community.
Right.
So, yeah, I asked, and honestly, people really have since day one not said no. And then, of course, you know this because of some of your experience. Once you start working with the students, it's really hard to stop doing that work. And so the retention is pretty good, too.
Yeah. Now, you said your first teaching experience, I think you said it was vibrant and rewarding. So that probably isn't the first thing people expect to hear when you say you've been teaching a class in a prison. That certainly isn't what I get when I tell people I'm going to go teach for MPWW. Was that a surprise to you? And what is it like to go into a state prison and teach creative writing?
Yeah, well, I'll answer the first question first. It was a surprise for a few minutes. And I think what surprised me more than anything was how sort of tenderly the students showed up. We were working with nonfiction the first night, and I didn't expect them to be so unguarded. And I didn't expect so many people to write about their fathers and their grandmothers and their childhood, and just to be so eager to speak. So that was probably what surprised me the most. You know, on the drive there, I had sort of rehearsed what I would do if people were unruly or if the class was, you know, just too cool for school and over it. And oh my gosh, I was so wrong. There were 6 people in the class, and their ages were between 20 and I'd say mid 50s. There was a 60-year-old man in the class, but yeah, I mean, adult men, and they really couldn't have been more eager to learn and to share their words with each other and with me. It was just a lot of fun. It was the absolutely best teaching experience I've ever had. So yeah, that was a surprise. But then I came to expect it, and I'm never disappointed. It always tends to be that people show up with vulnerability and enthusiasm, with a few exceptions, of course. Yeah, and going into the facility, Alida, you can talk about this too, unless you don't want to. But yeah, every facility is different. So in the 8 facilities that we're in, I think of them almost all like their own country.
Right.
And every warden is like his own governor, and admissions procedures have some common threads, but they're all so different. But the sort of primary threads that run through all of them is, of course, the metal detector and the driver's license and the rules for admission. So yeah, there are some facilities require an escort, some don't. Some are really strict about what you bring in, and others aren't. They're usually quite a drive from the metro area that we all live in. And so they take up a huge chunk of your day or night. It's not a small commitment to get out there. And yeah, a 30-minute window to get processed in before class is pretty typical. And so is waiting for your students to come in late, if that happens to be the situation for the day in that particular facility. So yeah, patience and waiting are fairly common. And the metal detector, those are sort of the 3 basics anyone can expect. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it is interesting going through that process, especially when you're new to teaching in a facility, because it's a little bit nerve-wracking until you get used to it. You know, am I wearing the right clothing so I don't set off the metal detector? Am I meeting the dress code? Do I have my clear plastic classroom bag with only what I'm allowed to bring and nothing extra? And then, once you get into the classroom, I find it's easy to forget where I am.
Yeah, I agree.
It feels like any other classroom, but maybe in some ways better.
Yeah.
Right? Because the students seem grateful to be there and really appreciative of learning. And sometimes you get that in like a community ed classroom, but often there's such a mixture of levels of engagement and levels of desire to learn this particular topic.
The investment, yeah.
Yeah, the investment is huge.
Yeah. Well, those spaces, I think people are probably surprised to learn are quite often very much like a regular classroom. Mm-hmm. So they're in the education building and it looks very much like a high school or a college classroom. Mm-hmm. Right. So aside from the sort of enthusiasm and the camaraderie in the class, the physical space doesn't always look like prison. Yeah.
Right. Definitely. And I think for me, the biggest sort of piece that I cue into occasionally and go, oh yeah, this is where I'm at, is the uniforms, the denim pants and the t-shirts and sneakers and everybody dressed the same. That tends to be the thing that sort of wakes me up again.
Yeah, for sure. When after so many years, even that stops being a reminder. It's just what you're used to. Like if that's the only place you teach, as it is for me, that's just what my students wear. So,
Right. Well, besides the physical differences of getting into the building, we've touched on the students are very appreciative of the opportunity to learn, but how would you characterize the students who are attracted to MPWW?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I will tell you that the way they characterize their cohort and their cohort system wide is pretty big. I think those that stick around and work and keep taking repeat, they have said before that they think of themselves as sort of the cream of the crop or the model students, and I think that's partly because of their interest in writing and self-expression, but I think it's also just the men and women who are ready to invest in programming and who are maybe tired of the prison culture and the stuff that happens if you're on the cell block at night instead of in a classroom in education. They're over it for the most part, and maybe weren't 15 years prior when they came in as teenagers or men and women in their young 20s. So I think that's part of it. And creativity too. I think creative individuals look for an outlet in whatever form is offered if there's nothing available. So we see a lot of visual artists, singers, people who are just used to creating and crave that. Does that sound right with your experience?
Yeah, it does. I think definitely we get students looking for the outlet for the creative expression and also what you said about wanting to be in the classroom instead of on the cell block. That makes a lot of sense to me too. How would you characterize them as writers? Is there a predominance of one genre over the other? I know MPWW teaches fiction, creative nonfiction, poetry. There have been some screenwriting classes, I think a songwriting class. So really a lot of artists in the community are bringing all sorts of writing pursuits to MPWW.
Well, you're asking a really volatile question.
Oh, volatile. Okay, I didn't know that.
No, I love answering this question in front of other instructors who are just like, you think so? We have differences of opinion about this, but I will tell you in terms of genre, first of all, our students, the longer they're involved, the more they write in every genre. And I think much more so than writers on the outside, they excel pretty quickly across the genres because they're invested in all of them and they don't have the luxury of specializing as much because of the way prison programming works. Right. We rotate the genres through, like Faribault is not the fiction facility, right? It's in short, they take what they get. and we offer a variety of genres, so they get good in all of them. And it's really, really unusual to find an MPWW student who claims only one genre. And there may be one that they feel like they are a little bit more proficient in, but they kind of rock a lot of the genres more than I think writers on the outside. That said, I do feel like a lot of the writers we work with love nonfiction. And I feel like, and this could be my bias because I am an essayist and I write nonfiction, and that's primarily what I teach. But I think that there are just a lot of pent up stories that people are wanting to tell before they start fictionalizing, before they start focusing strictly on form. I think there's some really urgent things that they want to say, and nonfiction is often the vessel for that. So I don't know. Does that offend the fiction teacher in you?
No, not at all. But of course, I only work with the fiction classroom, so you know, I have my fiction guys in mind all the time. But I'd like to touch on what you said about them having pent up stories to tell and really gravitating toward CNF. Can you describe kind of the experience as a teacher helping writers explore those stories and helping people find their voice, and kind of go into some of the importance of what creative writing does inside the facilities?
Yeah, sure. Well, I will preface this by saying, you know, every class that I teach, especially when I'm teaching new students, I bring in a lot of quotes from writers about why they write. And I tear them up and we sort of pass them around like trading cards, and people can get excited about one and they can swap them, whatever. And the one quote that seems to always resonate with the class, I mean, in a visceral way where we hear sighs and gasps, is Maya Angelou's quote that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. And that's the quote that really, it doesn't resonate as much with me, but boy, inside the classroom in the prison facility, it seems to. And I often start with childhood prompts. And it's not a secret to anybody that people who are in prison have been abandoned by the education system in many cases. Not to generalize, because there are plenty of people in with advanced degrees, but a lot of them have been overlooked by the education system, have gone through foster care, have had a lot of trauma in their childhood. And that comes out, it feels to me like it comes out when it needs to. And we don't ever write with those topics in mind. We're focused on craft and quality writing. But within that framework, even a prompt that allows a writer to control his or her narrative often leads them to those places. So, for instance, one of the prompts I love to start with, especially with intro writers, is, in the sensory world, right? And we start with a kitchen, like talk about the first kitchen you can remember, go back in memory as far as you can and describe that kitchen. Who was in it? What was he or she cooking? What was happening in that kitchen? And man, it doesn't take long for somebody who has a story that they need to tell to launch just from that into a place of pain or, maybe nostalgia. But those open-ended prompts can guide students pretty much wherever they need to go.
All right. So now I know that some of MPWW's students have been published, and there's at least one published memoir that is it fair to say, came out of MPWW's programming?
I would say yes and no. Primarily, it came out of a writer who was going to write no matter what.
Right.
And he was writing before we got there, and he'll be writing when he gets out. He's one of those writers who can't not write.
Yes.
And so we definitely love his work and love to claim him as our own, but he was doing that work long before we came around. Zeke is his name, and he actually founded the first writers collective, I think, in the country. The first collective that was founded by incarcerated writers themselves. That was the Stillwater Writers Collective, and he co-founded that with a man named Chris. And their collective has been a model for MPWW. So it's a hard question to ask. Like, did it come out of MPWW? I would say some of it was written in MPWW.
Yeah.
But he's really helped shape the sort of tone and energy behind the organization because of the collective they started. It has really shown us how to build community in the facility. And so I think that he would have built that community even without us. It probably would have been a little more complicated, but he knew all along the importance of surrounding himself with other writers to sort of inspire your own writing life. And he's just a super smart, talented guy who I think, those people, you meet them and they seem like they were born writers.
Yeah.
and it feels to me, I'd be curious to know what you guys think, but it feels to me like you can sometimes notice that in voice. Like if you look at any writer, sort of even new writers, and think about what sort of natural aptitude they bring to the page, to me, voice pops out as such a strong tell for a talent. And he's always had that from day one.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would agree with that comment about voice. The Zeke's story is wonderful. And I find with my own mentee, Mark, I think MPWW has provided such a foundation and such a structure for him within which he's been able to find community, build community, start mentoring other writers on his own, and really grow, not just as a writer, but within the framework of the community and, as a teacher, as a friend to other writers. Can you talk about some of the maybe surprising or maybe not surprising developments within the students' communities or within the infrastructure of the DOC that you've seen as an outgrowth of MPWW? And let's just establish, how long has MPWW been in existence?
Yeah, so we're just moving into our 9th year. So we've completed 8 full years, and October marks the 9th year.
Nice.
So yeah, here we go. We're rounding on a decade. And because of sentence lengths being, what they are, and the nature of some of the more committed students, we've worked with a lot of the same men and women for the amount of time we've been around. So we always work with new students, but yeah, we're talking about the same students over the course of those 8 years, fortunately and unfortunately. But the collective that I mentioned is a perfect example. So we sponsor collectives in 8 facilities, and that's basically for people on the outside, it's essentially a writing group. And why that's profound in prison is because they live in separate units and cell blocks, and you might not know who the other writers are if you're in prison. And even if you do, you might not have the opportunity to see them or to share work with them or just to be in community.
Right.
So the collectives are pretty amazing. Those are student run and student led. We just have to show up and be in the physical space with them. And then, of course, help them with whatever they need on the outside. Like if their collective wants a reading with writers from the outside, we obviously facilitate that. But within that framework, I would say one of the things that I think I'm almost always wanting people to know about our students that I feel like surprises them is how incredibly supportive they are of each other.
Yes.
Without fail, I've almost never been in a classroom where you can't feel the energy from every student trying to come forward, to the student whose work is up for workshop. They're unfailingly patient with each other.
Yes.
You know how every workshop has that one guy who's, he's not getting it. And he's got like a 600-page novel, and you know, and you're like, buddy, it's just not coming together, right?
Right.
In a workshop on the outside, you would feel and hear the sort of testiness and the strain and the intolerance. I'll tell you what, it just does not happen. They're very patient with each other, very kind. And they really support each other, which is the piece that I think I always want people to understand. And I can speak in hyperbole, but in this instance, I really, really don't think I'm exaggerating. They just got each other's backs. And I think that comes from being in a community in a pretty divisive place. It is just not at least not in the education building in the hours that we're in the classroom, it is not what the prison shows would suggest about the way that incarcerated people interact with each other.
Yeah,
So,
I would agree. I've seen that
yeah.
in all of the classes I've taught when you've got somebody who's struggling and somebody else steps up to say, hey, you're going to be great. Stay in the class, stick with it,
Totally.
do what you can,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or,
the support
yeah.
is incredible.
Right. Or, hey, did you
Yeah.
guys hear this poem that so-and-so wrote? He shared it with me and he's being shy. Let's read it. And
Yeah.
then, saying, why don't you read that at the next open mic night?
Mm-hmm.
And they often do when they are encouraged by their peers. And it's a pretty important piece of the community that we are part of, but it feels very much like we're taking cues from them and building alongside them. And
Right.
so, it's really, really a fun thing to be a part of.
When you first taught inside, did you know that this was going to be sort of a safe space for people to take emotional risks in their writing, to be vulnerable with each other, to, reveal things, and also to develop a supportive community? Did you have that in mind as a goal, or is that something that happened organically?
Yeah, I think it was very organic. I don't, I really had no idea what I was doing, to be serious. I don't think I had any clue, but I do think I'm an empath, and I'm okay at reading the room. And I think that people who are incarcerated by just circumstance also have to be pretty good at understanding each other's body language and sensing that sort of thing. And so I think that we all understood pretty quickly what we needed to do in that space, and people were careful with each other. So I think we were learning from each other really quickly. But I would also say I'm still getting it wrong after all these years. I get it right plenty, but I also sometimes screw up. I don't know about you, but my sort of teaching MO, I use humor a lot in the classroom, and I like for my classrooms to be pretty casual. And even now, I sometimes mess up, a particular student or a particular piece where I think I can joke with somebody to lighten the mood. And it's my students who come in and show me that I've gotten that wrong. They will usually respond with seriousness when it seems like it was warranted and I was being too flip or I misjudged it. They usually correct for me. So, I still get it wrong. And I don't know if you've been in a class with tears, perhaps not with fiction, but tears happen. Yeah. Right, Aria?
Oh, look at that face. Right. Are you ready to take your writing to the next level? Could you use the help of a developmental editor or writing coach? I work with writers at all skill levels and all stages of the writing process, both through project-based developmental editing packages and one-on-one, totally customized coaching sessions. Head over to wordessential.com to see how I can help you grow your story craft and become a more knowledgeable, skillful, exciting writer. Yeah.
Have you ever had tears in your fiction classes?
I haven't had tears per se, but I'm going through my memory trying to think. No tears, but definitely people have fictionalized things that touch on their own history. Sure. And I might guess it, but not know it. And then somebody else in the class brings it up in the discussion, or somehow it kind of, it's confirmed. And it's interesting to see those explorations of the personal through the fictional, and how without going there explicitly, the guys are still going there in that very supportive manner. And it almost feels to me like what happens in that room stays in that room. And I don't really know anything about prison culture outside of these classrooms, but my guess, my assumption is that there's a lot more posturing, a lot more defensiveness, a lot more just lack of safety, and so the classroom feels special. Just very wow.
Absolutely.
And something I think all of us writers need a space like that to take emotional risks in our work, no matter where we are. And so to see it in kind of the least expected place of all is, potent.
Yeah, I agree. We definitely hear students say that on their evaluations or just informally, and oftentimes they'll write a thank you card perhaps. And they definitely say stuff like, when I'm here, I forget that I'm in prison, or this is the only place that I can be real, or I can be myself. So yeah, I think we've definitely heard people say articulate that what we're experiencing is real for them too. So.
Yes. Yeah. I'm looking at Kathryn, but she probably can't tell that through Skype.
I can tell. I can tell.
You can tell. Yeah. Good. You're used to it.
I know. I'm used to it. I do actually have a question. I don't know if this is too off topic though, so feel free to redirect if necessary. But do you have any tips for forming a community like that around, because not all of us have, the MPWW or other, situations where we can participate even from like a teacher level in that sort of a community. Do you have any tips for how to form a supportive writers community like that?
Sure. You mean just in the community with
and just
regular writers? Yeah, for sure. Well, I will tell you, what I see my students do is just invite, and accept. And so, reach out. They are careful. I will say that. They don't invite people who are, going to cause the program to shut down. And I asked them how they know that. And they said, someone told me once, if someone's a knucklehead on the block, he's going to be a knucklehead in the class, for what that's worth. But beyond that sort of screening, they're so open. They invite people to everything. And then once they're there, they're just sort of open, like everyone's on their own journey and we're going to support each other where we're at. And so I would say maybe a lack of exclusivity, which surprises me and wouldn't have been my advice before working in prison. I might have thought, find people who work in your genre, or find folks who are writing at a similar level to you. And my experience in the communities that we work in is it's magical, just wide-ranging community and meeting people where they're at.
Yeah. That's an interesting idea to bring to the outside, to a general, writers collective, and say, be inclusive, meet people where they're at. It makes me wonder how well it would work. Is everybody going to be open and receptive and supportive? Lesson we can all learn, right?
Well, and I think part of that too, though, is you guys have a structure, like a serious structure to what's going on in classes, and then also for lack of a better term, it's a supervised meeting between writers, right? So you have a facilitator. Not all writing groups have somebody who's there kind of as a facilitator, right?
That's true.
So that's an interesting difference.
Yeah. A friend of mine out in Vermont, Robin MacArthur, is a novelist who started her own writing community on the outside because she's in a small rural community and she's just craving, more time with artists. She calls it Word Cafe, and I'm sure if you Google it, she's got something online. But she's sort of implementing some structure like that, Kathryn, where every so often there's a talk on a given subject, and then there's an open writing session. So her space is a lot more gorgeous than the space we're working in. But I think you're probably right to suggest structure as something that would help a lot of sort of varied ability levels come together in a cohesive way. Makes sense.
Yeah. So Kathryn, you'll have to be that facilitator and provide that structure.
I know, right? Hold on, I just gotta put one more hat on my head, and then I'll be good to
go. You need more things to do. So how has the Department of Corrections, the DOC, responded to the program over these 8, almost 9 years, and what changes have you seen, maybe in attitude toward the program, receptivity?
Well, obviously, when we first started, there was a lot of caution. There was a lot more oversight in, not that there's still plenty of oversight, but I would say much more so sort of on the classroom level and with the mentor packets. They just didn't know what to expect, even though they were supportive and opening doors for us. there was definitely caution. And I think
right.
as we've been around and we've proven ourselves to be trustworthy, they understand what the program looks like and what it means for us to bring in books and, that sort of thing. Every time there is change, every time the staff changes, the rules and the tone can change, and that can start at the top, but it can even be within each facility. So it really is such a nimble job trying to sort of take the pulse in every single facility every time there's a job change. It's easier to characterize it that way than sort of chronologically.
Sure.
And so on the wide-ranging scale, I would say we have overall really good support. And the more that people see our students publishing and writing successfully and being recognized even nationally by organizations like Prison Writing Oregon, or Pen America, I'm sorry. Students whose work is showing up or whose quotes are showing up in Lit Hub and whose books are, Minnesota Book Award finalists. I think they certainly come to respect the seriousness of the writers and the program. And I think with just a few exceptions, most of the Department of Corrections really admires the actual work our students are doing.
Right.
They bring our literary journals that the students contribute to around and are proud of the work that they're doing, and recognize them as pretty serious students. So yeah.
I've certainly felt that there's been an opening of possibilities and a lessening of restriction in the years that I've been involved with MPWW, and it's nice being on this side of the changes. At the beginning, working with my mentee, I had to use a pseudonym and hide my identity for my own safety. And that was a DOC regulation. But there came a point, and Mark and I have been working together for 7 years, I guess.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's what he just wrote in his last letter. And we're officially ending now. I just have to get that final letter out and we'll be done. But
it's a huge commitment.
It is. But, at some point I started to feel kind of disingenuous because I was giving him writing advice and I wanted to say from this perspective or from this experience, but to do so would have revealed myself. And at some point the DOC said, okay, I remember I asked you, can I tell him my name? Can I just, and got the go ahead. And so, it feels like a tribute to the work MPWW does to see those restrictions lessening over the years. It feels like a sign of trust and recognition there. Now, I think we need to acknowledge how involved the community is here. You mentioned a Minnesota Book Award finalist, guest artists coming into the facilities, students being published in literary journals. I know MPWW has broadsides that are printed every year, and they're beautiful art in their own right. And then what other kind of community partners are involved? And let's just cover that a little.
Yeah, well, I mean, Minneapolis, for those of you that are listening and don't live here, we live in utopia. It's really, I'm sorry, Kathryn, but it's just an amazing community of artists, activists, and they just don't say no, and they totally get the work. Like, you don't have to tell them why it's important. They already get it. And this community has rallied around us and continues to. So Hamline University is a tremendous source of support. They help facilitate the mentor program. They let us have a physical mailing address there and an office space. They donate room, a beautiful space for our annual reading. And they support us in a lot of other ways too. They're just always willing to help out. The independent publishers in the Twin Cities, Grey Wolf, Coffee House, and Milkweed, couldn't be bigger supporters of the work we do. They donate books all the time. They donate them to the libraries, to particular classes. They just don't say no to us. We try not to abuse it, but likewise, they will bring, when we invite those editors to come into the classrooms and talk to our student editors, they always are willing to come in. They've done interviews for students. They just show up in all sorts of ways. And you feel bad asking a nonprofit to help a nonprofit. It's a slog, but they all do. The indie bookstores in town, we have 1 billion. Ha ha ha. Again, y'all.
Come to Minneapolis.
They're so great. Actually, we're all full.
Sorry. Yep.
Just don't stay for good. The indie bookstores are incredible. They let us host these bubblegum machines, that carry little poems inside the capsules. And that's a fundraising thing that we do. They allow us to give 10 and 20% donations to people who are sustaining donors to our program. They let us hang out, have meetings. They're just, we have a spring party at them. Moon Palace, Milkweed, Subtext especially are all just bookstores who pull a lot of weight for us. And maybe more than all of those are the writers from the outside who come in to teach, like yourself, and also who come in to read in the reading series and in classes. The Stillwater Writers Collective has hosted an inside-outside reading series now for 2 years. This October 18th will be the second anniversary of that series, where we bring about 5 writers from the community in to read in the facility alongside the Stillwater writers. And that series is my all-time favorite. Nothing will ever top it. It's just incredible to have people read and share the work, all these different levels, different concerns. My dog wants out, can you tell?
Yes, I see the jumping.
It's also playtime. This is his playtime.
All right.
So those writers sort of blow me away because, as you know, Alida, for us, for a reading, we're locked into the facility from 6 to 8:30 because we follow their movement block. But to get to that facility and to get through, we leave the metro area at 4:30. So they essentially give up an evening from around 4 o'clock by the time we meet up to 9 o'clock to be part of a reading at which they'll read for 5 minutes. And I compiled a list for an instructor of ours, Sue Wong, who does such an amazing job of finding good writers to come out.
Hang on, you just broke up a bit.
I think was
Jen?
Writers Strong.
Hang on, you broke up for a second.
Yeah.
So you were just saying for Sue Wong to... So can you kind of pick up there?
You bet. So Sue is this local poet whose book actually comes out tomorrow, day after tomorrow, Bodega. But she's got a knack for finding writers to come in and read, and they just don't tell Sue no. And in the last 2 years, we've brought out 50 writers.
Wow.
To Stillwater, approximately 50. And I mean, writers that anybody in their right mind across the nation would be really excited to come in here read. They come out and share that space. And then after that, they're invested in our students. They follow their work. They actually care what happens. So it feels like in many ways, we have a large MPWW community that really does bridge the wall in a way that's so unusual and really thrilling for our students who now have met some of their poetry heroes and they're, hearing new work that they love, and they're watching people perform. And I think the writers that come in are learning from our students too. So, we're really, really lucky to have the support of this community.
That is an impressive list of supporters there.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to pause here. How are you doing on time, Jen? Because I want to make sure that we say something about the fundraising before you have to run away.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I've got about 10 more minutes.
Okay.
If you can tolerate the dog.
Yeah. Kathryn, do you have anything that you want to
No, I mean, you
add or ask?
kind of have me as at a disadvantage since I don't participate in or have anything like this in my area or anything like that. So. Well, it's just fascinating. It makes me envious is what it does.
Are you in Australia, Kathryn?
No, I'm in Seattle, Washington.
Oh, okay. Well, come see us. There's Lighthouse, right?
You should.
Lighthouse in Seattle?
I'm far
that's
from,
maybe Denver.
I'm only a couple hours from Seattle, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you could come visit, Kathryn. I've got a hide-a-bed in my couch, so you could actually come visit here.
On my reading.
Yes. So Jen, what sort of misconceptions about people in the prison system do you encounter, and do you find people outside of the writing community object to this sort of programming? Do you have to, dispel misconceptions often?
A lot less than I would have expected. And it might be that I just need to be outside my bubble a little more often. But no, I think by and large, people are confused. I think many assume that I'm in a dangerous position, or that I'm very brave, or very beneficent. So that's a common misconception. I feel safe. I feel really privileged to be doing it. I feel like I gain, it's the old teaching cliche, but I definitely feel like I gain more from our students than they gain from my classes. Absolutely. Those are pretty common misconceptions, but it's very rare to find somebody who thinks that, I mean, I know that those people exist, but they keep it to themselves, I guess, around me or on our social media. That sort of attitude that they're being punished. Why are we providing anything for them? It could be that the discourse is changing nationally, and we understand that punishment doesn't need to negate growth and investment in individuals, 95% of whom get out. It just might be that that the narrative has shifted, and that's why we don't hear it. But it's not often that we do.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
How about you? Do you experience that?
No, I find people are really curious about what it's like and what am I doing, and more so than why, it's the what. How does it work? How do you get in there? What are the students like? Are you scared? Do you feel safe? I suppose it's my mother's job to worry about me. So she's the one who says, be careful. Did you hear this thing in the news? Are you what? Okay. Know, it's like,
tell your mom you are so much safer there than at a regular public high school.
Yeah.
I would imagine. For real. I'm dead serious.
Yes. I don't doubt it.
One tension I do experience more and more, surprisingly, comes actually from the activist community, who sometimes wants to know what we're doing to change things structurally. I think that they worry that we're perhaps not helping efforts of decarcerating. I understand where they're coming from, but I also understand, as you do, there's a Mark inside, and there's, Zeke and Elizabeth, and these are people who are going to be there. And it doesn't always make sense to, it's just a tension. So decarcerating is an admirable goal, but,
so define decarcerating for anyone who's not familiar with that word.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think it can look a lot of different ways, but certainly I think people would advocate, and I'm among them, for, treatment for substance abuse, for instance, instead of drugs. If a woman is pregnant, I think people might argue that it's not in the best interest of the baby or society for her to be locked up, give birth to the baby, and have the baby go away. So alternatives to punishment where that's viable, certainly. Shorter sentences. There are lots of different ways that can look, but I would say more than tension about why we're there from people who don't think that the students we work with deserve it, are people who are concerned that we're making prisons stronger through the work, or at least making them look, how do I say this, that we're helping them justify that the work that they're doing is rehabilitative when it's also traumatic and devastating. And I agree with them that it is, but I also know that there needs to be something positive within that framework, and it's something that MPWW is just really good at providing. So it's a tension, but that's where I find myself having to explain more often than not.
Right. And the impact MPWW has on the students there, I think, is profound, and it might not be changing the system, and really, how could we, I would ask, but the individuals who learn and grow, they're going to be different people as a result, just like we all change through our life experiences and our educations, our relationships, our mentoring, our, all those things. just because they're inside doesn't mean they shouldn't have that or wouldn't benefit in the same way we would.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and I even argue to some extent, I think for people who feel like art can activate change, it's not necessarily quick. It's not the governor, reducing 40 years off of a person's sentence. But I do believe art can make change. And I think that when the artists themselves are the change makers, that's doubly powerful, right? Not only does it give the writers that we work with a voice, but suddenly they're in charge of their own agency. And if that's not a powerful tool to give them to make change, I don't know what is. And who better to speak about the, perils of the carceral state than the men and women who have experienced it. So I think they've got quite a mighty sword with their, with their pen. And I think change is slow, but I think that the change is going to come from them. And so it's a humble thing. We don't get to knock it all down, but I think they're becoming well equipped to make change through their words. So,
yeah, that's powerful. So what does MPWW need, if anything? But I'm sure there's always something, right, in terms of support and involvement. And how could some of our listeners or all of our listeners who don't live in the Twin Cities help MPWW?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I mean, obviously nonprofits need money to run, and we spend a lot of energy writing grants and soliciting donations. And that's just a really easy way to support us. And we make really good use of that money. So we don't have physical office space. We work from home offices to keep costs down. And we are a really lean machine. We work with very little, and we rely on, the beneficence of our teachers like you and mentors to do the work for little or nothing. Those teachers drive long distances and give up an entire day. So it's helpful to have a little extra money for gas when we're able to do that. Like your trek up north, for instance, Alida, you guys? You want to tell people how long you drove?
Oh, God, that was, that was a nightmare. Driving from South Minneapolis to Moose Lake, Minnesota, I had to leave no later than 2:30 to arrive, no later than 2 to arrive by 5 in order to start teaching a class from 5:30 to 8:30. And it wasn't quite so bad on the way home because traffic was gone, but it was kind of a nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a haul to get out there. So donations help. Obviously, they help us run classes. They help us with books. But they also, the more that we have, the more we can offer people a little bit of a stipend for their gas. So donations are great. Our fundraiser starts, when did I tell you it started? On the 19th, I guess, of this month.
Right.
And we definitely rely on individual donations. We've been taught by the nonprofit gurus of the world that individual donations provide stability. And that's critically important for us because we work with a vulnerable population who is used to programming going away. And so our primary goal has always been to do good work and to stick around.
Right.
And what we understand about sticking around is that individual donations are the most stable form of funding above grants and foundations and all that stuff. So we love our individual donors and we need them. And we're hoping to raise $30,000 between the October 19th and somewhere in the middle of November. So yes, we would take that. Any amount would be super helpful.
And that $30,000 is going to fund teachers in the prison. As you said, MPWW is very lean, home offices. There's not a ton of overhead here, so people don't have to worry about bureaucracy and, things like that when making a donation. Now, where can people find MPWW and that donation button?
You bet. So if you go to mnprisonwriting.org/donate, there's a donation button there. You can make a one-time donation, or you can become a sustaining donor, and that comes with some discounts on books and that sort of thing, and also the occasional tote bag and our undying love. And we work with
Handwritten thank you notes as well. There is a call going out to all of the teachers, everybody involved with MPWW to get ready to start our thank you note season.
It's intense, that handwriting stuff. But we will get those beautiful handwritten notes out to you. And if yours is not legible, that means you got one from me. And for folks who are local, it's a lot of fun for you to come to our annual reading, which happens on October 19th at Hamline University in the Class Center. That's at 7:00. The audience is usually around 300, 350 strong, and we read work on behalf of students. And then the audience has the opportunity to write feedback for the students, and we pass that feedback along to the students. And to tell you how meaningful it is, one of our students walked into his cell one day after it had been delivered, and he saw the stack sitting there, and he sighed because the stack was so big. He thought, oh no, they sent me everyone's. I'm going to have to sort all this. They got it wrong, but it was all for him, and well-deserved, because the essay he wrote was incredible. But he rationed the feedback so that he read only one card a day. Oh, wow. So that it could last until Christmas. And this is a man who has no family in the country. And the notes that the audience left for him meant that much to him. And we hear that time and again. So just showing up and listening, if you don't have the funds to support us, is an incredible way to support the writers. They read every single card and they treasure them. And they send them home, like as we all would, right, to Brad's mom. So yeah, if you don't have $50 to pitch in, or $20 or 10,000 or whatever your giving level is, show up if you're in the area and listen, and send some feedback to the students. That means everything to them.
Yes, and if you are able to come to the reading, you will be impressed. You will be wowed by the quality of the writing and the readings. The student pieces are read by teachers, mentors, sometimes a family member or a friend. And I believe you've had some students who are now on the outside who've been able to come and read their own work.
Yeah, we'll have 3 former students there reading. All 3 of them rock stars. One's flying in from Washington. She's probably your neighbor, Kathryn. So yeah, I'm very, very excited about the former students giving readings. They're writers in the world now, and really good ones. And so it's going to be really fun to let them take some time at the mic.
Yes. All right. So the events will all be listed on the website, mnprisonwriting.org, and people can donate there, mnprisonwriting.org/donate. And we will, of course, have links in our show notes at storyworkspodcast.com. Sorry, now my dog is voicing that it's dinner time. Is there anything you would like to add, Jen? Anything you want our listeners to know about the work?
If I could really quickly, we have a new partnership with We Are All Criminals, and it's called SEEN, capital SEEN. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful shift for us, in that the Department of Corrections has allowed our students to be photographed and allowed their work to be shared widely. And so Emily Baxter, who is the executive director of We Are All Criminals, has just done an incredible job of getting to know these writers and helping put their stories out in a way that's both visual and really respectful. And it's just a real honor to have those words and faces captured in a way that's beautiful and celebrates them as people and celebrates them as artists. And that is, that project's just beginning, but it's definitely going to be something people in Minnesota see a lot of. And I think nationally at some point it will make its way around the world. So that is at weareallcriminals.org/scene. And so some of the writers we've talked about today are featured there, or will soon be featured there. And you can check in on them over time. I think their stories will expand to include family members. So it definitely gives a unique look at sort of the complexity of all of us, and those behind bars whose complexity is often a little bit reduced or a lot reduced. So that's another cool site to check out for anybody who's interested.
It is. That's a really exciting and interesting project. And we will put that link in the show notes as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you, Jen. It's been wonderful having you here. And
it's been great.
Thank you for listening to the Storyworks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com.